There we go.
Evan Trubee.
Hi. All
There he
right.
goes.
Thank you.
Okay, so Evan Trubee. Okay, so first of all, what kind of name is that, Trubee?
Yeah. Well, I believe it's the heritage is Dutch, maybe a
Okay.
little French. I'm an American mutt. Let's call me that.
Okay.
But yeah, the name I believe is Dutch.
And your dad was named Trubee, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, and did you grow up in New Jersey?
I did. Yeah, I grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, with 4 older brothers. One of my older brothers, Jay Trubee, lives here in Palm Desert as well, and owns and operates with his wife June, Jillian's Restaurant. And he's been here since the mid '80s.
And you moved here about 30 years ago.
I did. Yeah. Moved in the summer of 1993, just after college graduation. I had visited my brother Jay in high school growing up, and I decided this is the place for me. I made my decision very early that I love Palm Desert. It was just I knew it was going to be the place for me. The open space, everything about it.
Did you consider other areas of California?
No, this was it. Everything about it. Like I said, the surrounding mountains, the weather, and Palm Desert specifically versus any other desert city. I just felt more at home here. I just felt that it was, I could tell it was well run, it had every amenity you wanted, and it was going to be a great place to raise my family. I knew I was going to get married, have kids, and that was the life I wanted, and Palm Desert delivered.
So what are some of the outstanding features of the desert to you?
The entire desert?
Well,
yeah. If you talk about, I run an outdoor adventure company. So we do hike, bike, and Jeep tours throughout the Coachella Valley. And so what is so amazing about this area in general, if we go big picture, is within a 20-minute drive from my home, I can be in wilderness. And either up in the high elevations, 3, 4, 5, up to 8,000 feet, or I can go into the San Andreas Fault Zone. There's places to play and explore and just leave civilization behind. It's remarkable. And that was it's partly just smart growth, and it's partly because we're relatively young. But there's so many places to go play and explore, and to me, that's heaven. I love it. And then Palm Desert specifically, the amenities, everything. I mean, if you look at our Civic Center Park, the Aquatic Center, Living Desert, McCallum Theater, on and on and on. The city, you would never have to leave. Everything's here in our city. And I think the success is borne out by the fact, if you look at visitorship in our parks, in our aquatic center, it's generally about 3 to 1 of non-residents who come and use our amenities. And that's testament to me of what we've done to provide for the rest of the valley, and how the quality of services that we provide here in Palm Desert. I'm so proud.
Do you remember when the Aquatic Center opened? I think it opened yet again, or when it was rebuilt or something?
I believe it was 2008, 2009, I believe, but that's a rough estimate if I remember correctly. I'm on the Parks and Rec Committee, so I should know. But I believe it was 2008, 2009, because right now we're dealing with entrance fees and we're revisiting all that. But what a great amenity, yeah.
What does the Parks and Rec Committee do? What does that do? And is that the city? Or?
Yeah, there's quite a bit under their purview. The library is one of them, which is a great passion of mine. The Aquatic Center, local trails, all the smaller parks within the city, besides Civic Center, Ironwood, little pocket parks throughout the city.
You call them pocket parks?
Well, some of them are kind of small. They're the one on Dan's, the name escapes me, but there's some smaller parks that serve a great purpose, but still need love from the city and need to be maintained by the city. And of course, planning for the future. The regional park that's planned on Frank Sinatra and Portola is a great concern of ours, or is taking a lot of our interest now, because we want to make sure we do it right for all the growth that's going to go in. We anticipate probably near 10,000 residents by the year 2030, and we make sure they have the amenities available for them. And then there's another park that's scheduled to be built, 27 acres, Dinah Shore and Portola area. So yeah, that's among our responsibilities on the committee.
Those parks, the one that's in works now, and the one that's the proposed one you just mentioned about Dinah Shore, is that to serve the new houses that are going up, or?
Yeah, it really is. I can tell you that the smaller park, the 27-acre, that was entitled. We must build that, because with the developers, there was an agreement, and residents moving in as part of the agreement, that we're going to provide a park at that. But we just felt like we also wanted to have a larger park with more amenities. It's a little windy down there, and the residents don't want a big, bright park right in their backyard. So it's a nice compromise that we've come to have a smaller park to meet our obligations there at the very north end of town, but also have the regional park a little bit closer to the center of town, and not with the bright lights and everything that might disturb the peace and quiet of those developments way up north. So.
What kind of lights do you call the ones that are not so bright? There's a name for that.
Well, I think the main thing is you won't have, if you do it properly, you don't have those evening sports events with the big floodlights. So that's what we're trying to avoid at the smaller park. The larger park, and again, I'm just going to go small and larger. They're not named yet, so forgive me for that.
Okay.
But at the larger park, we probably will have a little more lighting and a little more evening activities there.
Your wife, Kristen, is an elementary school teacher.
She is. Yeah, I'm very proud of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
I bet she is. She was a good mama. I know that.
Still is.
Still is. You have 3 children.
We do.
And they went to high school here?
Yeah.
Are they
my
going
oldest,
to high school now? Or?
Yeah, my oldest is 21 years old. Graduated from Xavier High School in 2019, and lives with us now and is working for my company, which is wonderful. And then a middle daughter who's going off to Loyola Marymount this fall, just graduated Xavier High School as well. And we're glad, by the way, for Xavier. But my youngest is Holly. She's going to be entering her junior year at Palm Desert High School. So I'm glad that we have the choice, because each child thrives in a different environment. Yeah.
You were a youth sports coach. What does that mean?
Well, as my children came up, somebody's got to coach them. And so, in other words, when they signed up for example, the YMCA basketball, and by the way, the Y is another great amenity that I didn't mention. We're so lucky to have again, it's a regional service. Kids, they provide services to Cathedral City, Indio, and other, and again, I'm on the YMCA board as a liaison from the city. And I've discovered they're really the only Y in the desert, and they're based here in Palm Desert. We're so proud to host them. But they serve other cities with after-school programs and things like that. So again, another point of pride for Palm Desert. But as my children came up through sports, and I realized they need coaches, and I've always had a love of basketball. I coached basketball for many years, and then my 2 oldest children ran cross country at Xavier. So I helped coach Lions over there, and we developed a heck of a bond. He's a really good man, and I've really enjoyed that time coaching. But now they're older, and I think that period might be done, unfortunately. Yeah.
You have a business here called Big Wheel Tours. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Okay. Now it's got that gorgeous storefront over here on 111.
Yeah.
Did you have a business before? Was that located somewhere else before?
No, we've always been in Palm Desert. In fact, I started 25 years ago in 1998 out of my garage, and it just very small and humble, because I didn't want to have a huge cash outlay to start my business. And luckily over time it grew. And I worked in the evenings for my brother at Jillian's restaurant. So that paid the bills, because the business certainly wasn't. But over time, luckily our reputation grew. I developed relationships, we expanded our services, and little by little, it grew to the point now where we used to be sort of more of an industrial in the part of town, Cook Street, and we always had sort of warehouse spaces there, but we wanted to have more retail space. I'm glad you noticed. That big bright signage there on 111.
It's
so I'm very
good.
proud of that, and proud because I was able to actually purchase the building. So there's nowhere else in the valley I would rather buy real estate than here in Palm Desert. I'm vested. I want to lay down roots here, and that was just another kind of, again, my commitment to Palm Desert is 100%. Yeah. So.
What are the services there? I've looked over and I thought,
yeah, we do guided hike, bike, and Jeep tours, and that's again primarily for tourists. However, as far as the locals sometimes will hire us to take them out, especially if they have visitors in town. But we also do bike repairs. Bicycles are a passion of mine, So bicycle repairs and sales as well now with that more retail-oriented space we're in. And we have a shop in Palm Springs as well. So we can cover both sides
What's
of
that
the
one
valley.
called in Palm?
Big Wheel. Yeah,
Okay.
Big Wheel Tours. Yeah.
Do you have electric bikes then?
We do. Yeah, we have the battery-powered electric bikes, which are becoming very popular. And you know, I got to say, the city's infrastructure is terrific. Between what we have with the CB Link as well as the traditional striped bike lanes, it's a very bike-friendly city, and I'm proud of that as well.
So you have the tours. These are primarily, are these Jeep tours too?
Yeah.
Or are they, okay, they
Yeah,
are. Okay.
off-road. And the two major destinations would be Joshua Tree National Park and the San Andreas Fault Zone, because those are two places that are in our backyard that people already know before they get here. So it's actually a pretty easy sell. They arrive wanting to see these places, and we provide it. And we've got terrific guides who are really good naturalists. So they bring the area to life for the guests. And yeah, so we have Jeeps, SUVs, vans, all kinds of ways to explore.
And I've noticed actually before you have a van that transports bicycles out too, right?
Yeah, we got a trailer that can carry up to 100 bikes. So that's quite a sight as you're driving down the road to see 100 bikes on the back of a trailer. Always get heads turning. And then the Coachella Festival, we rent quite a few bikes for that. So there's bicycle rentals as well.
I want to know more about that. So let's see. Are these day tours? Are they overnight? Some of them are overnight?
No, they're all roughly, sorry, I'm gonna get my phone away so we don't have that buzzing. We actually, most of them are roughly 4 to 5 hours door to door. So what we found over the years is that's about as much time as people want to be out between breakfast and lunch or lunch and dinner. So that seems to fit most people's schedule. And also, fortunately, those two destinations, Joshua Tree and the San Andreas Zone, are close enough to be accessible in that time frame. So it just all falls into place perfectly.
I've noticed some vans up there on Box Canyon, I think it's.
That's our bread and butter bike tour.
Oh,
you
yeah.
drive them to the top off of Interstate 10, and there's a 20-mile stretch of road to Mecca.
Oh.
And it's a beautiful downhill bike ride.
Wow.
So that's just primarily a sightseeing tour. I mean, you have to pedal, but you lose about 1,600 feet of elevation over the course of that ride. So, yeah, it's
Do you provide the bikes for that?
everything. People just show up with comfortable clothes, and we take care of everything.
Lunch?
Well, that's why we do breakfast, or lunch and dinner. So we do snacks, but we don't want to get in the catering business. Yeah.
And when did your passion for bicycling begin?
As soon as I threw my leg over my first tricycle. I mean, I really can remember being in my driveway as probably 3, 4, 5 years old and getting on a tricycle and thinking to myself, I had this discussion the other day with another cyclist, and I just remember that, and they shared the same feeling. You're a little kid, and if you love freedom and adventure, you realize really quick, like, wait a minute, I can take myself out around the neighborhood. I don't need mom or dad or big brother to walk me around. I can get out myself and go explore wherever I want to go. And that was always the appeal of cycling. And plus, of course, the fitness aspect is great, but it really was the sense of freedom and adventure always appealed to me. It's really remarkable how it just triggered something in my brain that never left. I've ridden across the country twice from Seattle to New Jersey.
What was the name of that tour? Was it?
That was back in the mid-90s, and that was the coast to coast. There was an outfit out of Seattle that put it on, Tim Nealand and Associates. Actually, my wife and I each did it. And we were based here. You raised money for a local charity. We raised money for Shelter from the Storm and Foundation. It was called Foundation for the Retarded at the time. It's ARC now. And it was just a great experience all around. Great way to sightsee, great way to get involved in the community and help a cause, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
How long did that take to go from
7 weeks, about 70 miles of riding a day, 1 day off for rest and relaxation. Yeah.
Was there camping out, or was
Yeah, it was a mix. It was a mix of sleeping in high school gyms, camping, a few hotels sprinkled in to give you a little break. But yeah, it was fun, really fun. Great way to see the country.
Yeah. Did you follow a model for your business? Did you follow an existing model, or did you craft it yourself?
Yeah. Actually, when I first started, I thought we were going to do the multi-day trips the way that I had done on the cross-country trip. Because really, my business really got up and running after I came back from the second cross-country trip. And I thought I was going to do the overnight tours. And then I quickly realized that's an all-day commitment. I mean, once you do those things, you're, from the time people wake up to the time they go to bed at night, you're kind of babysitting them. And once you want to have kids and a family, it doesn't really fit. So then I worked into the half-day tours. And when I first started in the late 90s, that's what we did here, is more of the we've evolved into the half-day trips locally. And it was a matter of developing the relationship with the concierges in those days. We didn't have the smartphones and Google and TripAdvisor and Yelp and everything else. So I just beat the pavement and brought them all chocolate chip cookies. That was always my claim to fame. It was my homemade chocolate chip cookies. And it was amazing how it won people over. And I used to provide chocolate chip cookies on all the bike tours, and then it just got overwhelming and I couldn't do it anymore. But that's how I developed a reputation. It was a lot of fun. Got a lot of great relationships with those concierges. And once you have that relationship, then you realize, well, and I hired really good guides. And I quickly realized that, why not offer Jeep tours? That's where these guides' strength was anyway. Why not offer these other services now that we've got the relationships and the staff? And so it just kind of grew organically. It wasn't never my intention. It just sort of, I was responding to kind of what the market demanded. And luckily it worked. And the business has grown where I was eventually able to quit my night job. Had to say goodbye to my brother, but we're still friends. And the business took off. So it was, slowly. Like I said, it took me 25 years to get to a point where I could buy a building in Palm Desert, but I'm so glad it did.
Were the other tours usually 4, 5, 6 hours, something?
That was normal. That's always been normal. Any more than that, and people start getting a little. They want the half day.
I know that's very true. They go to the various hotels, right? Do they start in various? Or people
we'll
show up at your place?
We'll pick up. We have a central pickup point, the Morton Steakhouse in Palm Desert, that we use. It just seems to work where there's plenty of parking and it's central, and we can hit the interstate quickly from there.
You must know the desert really well.
Better than most, not as well as others, I'll tell you. You know, because I'm in the office more now. But I've had some great guides over the years who've been really good mentors. Bruce Pointer is one of them. I'm very proud of my relationship with him. He's such a good man. You know, Palm Desert resident, probably in the mid-70s by now, Vietnam veteran, Indio fireman, and he has a passion for the desert like you wouldn't believe. So I've learned so much from him. And we spend our Sundays together still, even though he's retired, and just go out and explore. And he's shown me canyons and areas that very few people know about. It's a treat, a real treat.
Does that fit into any hiking, or is it's mostly bicycles?
No, we do hiking. You know, I would call it more nature walking.
Okay.
Is mostly what we do. If somebody wants a serious hike, I turn them onto the local hiking clubs and things. But we would do more hour-long nature walks as part of an overall excursion. That's how it fits into what we do.
What kind of patrons do you have?
All over. You know, we're so blessed here. In the winter, especially, obviously, we have a draw from all over the world. But Canadians love it here. It's a direct flight down from Vancouver or Calgary. But yeah, all over the world. Colder climates. You know, in the winter, you're going to get the Canadians and the East Coasters, the Chicago, the Midwesterners, who are just so happy to be out in the summer. And what I love so much about that is it's so easy for the locals to start taking our winters for granted, our weather. You forget snows happen. You forget there's hurricanes and blizzards in other parts of the world. Then they come through your doors and you say, "Oh yeah,
so appreciative."
Yeah, I forgot that there's snowing somewhere else in the world. So it is a good reminder, because it's easy to get accustomed to think this is normal. This is heaven on earth in the winter.
What about the summers?
The summers, we're steady. Our business is steady. We literally do 10 times the volume of business in April than what we do in August. So it's it's a dramatic, seasonal business. But we're still steady, and I like summers because it gives you a chance to relax a little bit. My wife's off, my kids are off school, and we get a chance to visit more. Yeah.
How did your interest in public service begin?
I was always fascinated by history, and so it's always had an appeal. Of course, history ties in with civics and government. You can't talk about history without governance, and that's a lot of what human interaction. People have to be governed. We have to set up a civil society at some point, otherwise it's chaos. So I just slowly got in, and I love Palm Desert. And after my kids got a little older, I had a little more free time. I started getting involved with local group here in South Palm Desert that at the time was fighting the short-term rental issue. If you remember, probably 2016, 2017 era, short-term rentals were sort of a new industry at that point. And it was a little bit like the Wild West. No municipalities didn't really know how to govern them or treat them. It was kind of a conflict between private property rights versus city zoning. It was a real interesting mix. And so I got involved, and I got to meet some really good people, and it just really appealed to me. So I eventually got to meet our city council, Jan Harnick, through that process, and of course also the CD Link issue. Local city council and also Tom Kirk from CBAG know that I'm an advocate for cycling. So I was brought into that discussion, and through that process got to meet some of these people and say, this is a lot of fun. And I ran for city council. I got appointed to the Resource Preservation Committee here in Palm Desert, served on that for a while, and ran for city council in 2020. But unsuccessfully. It was incumbents, and it's tough to unseat incumbents in what is really a very happy city. It was a great experience. Got to know a lot of people. It's a little odd during COVID, and so went back to my regular life after the campaign, and I was perfectly happy. But then last summer, Savvy Jonathan, who I have a great deal of respect for, called me up in late July and let me know that he was not going to run for re-election. And so this was kind of a curveball. If I decided I was going to run for city council on my own, I would probably start in January, February planning. And so it was kind of a curveball. I spent about a week thinking about his, I guess you would call it a proposal or offer, and eventually decided to run. And with his support. And of course, it's a much easier path when an incumbent in Palm Desert steps out of the way. So I knew at least that's one hurdle I wouldn't have to overcome. But we also have now ranked choice voting, which was a little bit of a new system that had to be explained to people.
How do you describe that?
How much time do you have? It was part of a settlement agreement with litigation several years ago that brought that. It was sort of a negotiated agreement that we went to 2 voting districts and also adopted ranked choice voting, which is, to my mind, a very complicated way of counting votes. Very untraditional, kind of foreign to most people. And so anyway, that was part of it. Luckily, it worked out for me and I was able to win my seat. I'm grateful, and it was a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying serving the city very, very much. Very proud of it. But the ranked choice, it's something very different. And maybe it may have time for it would, Is
that continuing now?
It is. In fact, we had a city council meeting last night where we broached the subject of possibly moving from 2 to 5 districts.
Right.
And of course, ranked choice came up in the discussion as well because it's not very popular. And there's some consideration of doing away with that if we adopt 5 cities, sort of maybe a compromise, I guess you'd call it. But we have to talk to litigants about that in order to make it happen. So, and that's where we stand with that on June 9th, 2023.
City council ideas versus voting. City council decision versus voting decision. I always thought that was kind of, for instance, they're talking about the districts, just having the people decide versus having the city council decide.
Well, you mean as far as whether or not to divide into 5 districts? Yeah. Historically, we'd always been at large, of course. There was a ballot measure in the 2022 election that was non-binding. I would almost describe it as a poll. And the ballot measure asked the voters if we want to go to 5 districts. We moved from the 2 district to 5 district, or basically, essentially, I think it was worded more like, do we want to break up the 2 districts into 4? And it passed 53 to 47 on a citywide. Voters in both districts got to vote for it. And it passed, and so now we're dealing with that. Now, again, it's not binding, but it gives, I guess, it gives some impetus to the movement for 5 districts that as a council, we're supposed to be responsive to the will of the people. And so that's where we stand with that right now. Yeah.
I was kind of
Even though
curious
personally,
about what is non-binding is just, you know, like a marketing poll or something.
It was
to find out what's the pulse of society.
Yeah, exactly. Personally, I would prefer our city was at large. I think that's best for the residents and best for governance. There's arguments to be made on both sides. I still maintain my position that I wish we were still an at-large city, but I think that ship has sailed. Yeah. And it looks like, you know, who's going to be watching this in the future, but you'll probably be living in a 5-district city.
Mm-hmm. Change is very slow.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny, but you know, coming from the private sector and getting into government, and in the private sector, I'm the boss. I can decide tomorrow that I'm going to purchase another vehicle, and it's done. Or I'm going to change policy somehow, or I'm going to fire somebody or hire somebody. It's my decision of mine alone, and it happens quickly. And I have to deal with the repercussions. In city government or government, change happens slowly and it's deliberate, and that's good. And there's 5 of us. There's no dictator on city council. There shouldn't be. You need those 5 different voices because, and the reason why is, and I see it clearly now, is you're spending other people's money and you're affecting other people's lives. It has a wide-ranging impact, and you have the trust of those who are governed. And so it should be slow and deliberative. And so, yeah, when I'm on the other side in the private sector, I'm complaining about the pace of government. But now I see it's a necessary evil, for sure. It's a good thing to be slow and deliberate.
Does the city have new challenges post-COVID, or is some of the same ones, or are they new ones?
Yeah, you know, there are some things that I'm discovering through this process. You know, live here 30 years and you think you know everything about the city. But getting into government is a big learning curve. And one of those, which sort of surprised me, was that something called Redevelopment Agency, which was a state program for many, many years in California, which gave us, and I can't describe it, like I said, it expired way before I got into office. But it provided a lot of money for cities to develop land. We used it to develop Desert Willow. It was meant to be a driver for economic growth. And it worked. You know, Desert Willow was a great example of that. We brought in resorts and a lot of TOT revenue as a result of that. But the program expired in 2013 as a result of what the city deemed was abuses. In other words, cities were using the money that really wasn't intended for. However, there's still some money available for us to spend. And so we're kind of at the tail end of that now, 10 years later, spending some of those on capital improvements. However, it's affected our city budget. That money is no longer available. We've built projects that are now in the stage of needing maintenance. Yeah. So how do we maintain all those projects when the money dried up? And so unfortunately, this is against kind of my overall philosophy, but we're having to consider a sales tax increase. Right. And it would cover what we need. When you talk about this is more than just post-COVID. This is kind of 10 years in the making.
These are maintenance it's for maintenance generally, right?
Yeah, maintenance, a little bit of growth, I would say. I'll give you an example that I've been working on, and we talked about it, is our library. I've always felt that we should have a standalone library. Well, always, since I've gotten on council in the last 5 months. There's a lot of intermediaries between us, the city council, city staff, and our library. It's being managed and run by a couple separate entities. We pay COD to lease the building. I think our services have suffered as a result. Well, if we want to take that back, it's going to cost money. And so something like this extra sales tax revenue that we would generate could go towards that. And I think the residents would benefit. I think it'd be a direct benefit. And so, that's just one example.
Is that one of your passion projects?
Big time. I don't know. Libraries to me are a center of community involvement. It's where groups get together. You could have learning and retirement programs there, adult learning, clubs, organizations. And to me, a library is just a place where you go to pursue your own pleasures. If you want to learn about whatever, it's a place for people to get together, which is, I think, despite all the technology, face-to-face is so important still. But also you can pursue your own interests, and it's free, or at least it's paid for by the community and your taxes. And I think it's one of the things that we should be providing. Once you have, public safety figured out and you've got clean streets, let's indulge the arts and the pursuit of intellectual endeavors. And that's what a library to me is meant for. So I'm really passionate about it. I think it'd be a great feather in our cap to have a thriving library that we have direct control over. To me, that's super important.
That's kind of a long-term plan, is that?
Yeah, well, we'll see how quickly we can get it done. I mean, it was on last night's agenda, at least in the
it
closed
was?
session. But it looks like most likely we will untangle ourselves from our agreement with the county and COD and move forward with a standalone library. I think the whole council's for it. It's hard to argue against.
Yeah.
I think they all see it as important. I think the library currently bears our name, but isn't.
Utilized.
Yeah, it's not utilized, or it's not providing the services that we kind of expect here in Palm Desert. Not to sound elite, but I mean, everything else we do is 5-star. And I think our library should be as well. So that's what we're looking to accomplish here.
Who would head, is there a committee formed?
Yeah, in fact, we just last night approved the task force of about 12 people. Well, fortunately, I'm on it, and I would have it no other way. 9 residents or citizens, Jan Harnick and I, and Chris Escobedo, who's city staff. But the task forces will meet publicly, and anybody who wants to have input is welcome. So
That's exciting. That's really
I
exciting.
can't tell you, that's an example of city government or government moving faster than I would have anticipated.
I know
This is
it.
a subject I only brought up to our city manager's attention maybe January, February, I believe. That was when we first sort of approached the city manager and say, all I did was make an inquiry. What are the details? What's going on with our library? Tell me who we paid the land lease to, how much it is, how much we pay, blah, 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 all these questions. And they came back and quickly. And it's remarkable how quickly this thing has moved. Because if you think, we've had this agreement with the county since 1996 when our library was built, and it was just sort of forgotten about. And for 27 years, it's been status quo. And to have it kind of halfway resolved in 5 months is really exciting for me. Very makes me really happy. Yeah, and it's a testament to our staff and city manager.
You mentioned that.
Oh, the service they provide is incredible. They're very responsive, and they care about Palm Desert.
How do you envision the future of this area?
Well, Jan Harnick used to have, during the campaign, she had a really wonderful, she really encapsulated it, and it escapes me now. But essentially, I think what it boils down to is embracing what got us here. The same tenets of, quality of service, quality of life for our residents, all the amenities we provide. And it sounds sort of mercenary, but, we have so many, you milk the tourist to some degree. You utilize that resource. They're going to come here and visit. They don't put a huge impact, or they don't have a huge impact on our infrastructure necessarily in terms of being full-year residents. They're here for a week, hopefully spend a lot of money, generate a lot of TOT money that then benefits the residents. And so I think that's the philosophy we've always embraced, is make sure that, like El Paseo, it generates a tremendous amount of TOT revenue, the JW Marriott. So if we continue that sort of philosophy of, and it's a reasonable trade-off, because when those tourists come to town, they do affect our quality of life with increased traffic and increased crowds and everything else. So the residents should get some benefit from that. We do make a bit of a sacrifice during the course of the season to deal with the tourists, and we welcome them because we understand that they're helping to build resources. They help us provide for the McCallum Theater, Living Desert, and support those other things that then are the Aquatic Center or the Civic Center Park. All these other services we're able to provide are, on the back of that revenue. And so if we maintain that philosophy going forward and keep it really, city government doesn't need to be that complicated, in my opinion. Your mandate is for public safety, and the Riverside County Sheriff's doing a terrific job.
Is that something you're involved in? Public safety? I know it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Sheriff's Department and public safety. They do an outstanding job. Again, almost private sector level service, really. So responsive. The county fire, excellent. So we've got that dialed in. I think our residents are really happy. Clean, safe, well-paved streets. we've got that under control. So now we start to think about the other services. But it's going to be managing the growth on the north end. 10,000 new residents, that's a 20% growth for our city in the next 6, 7, 8 years. So managing that growth while still making sure that those residents in the north part of town have the same amenities that we enjoy in this part of town, meaning a regional park, maybe built a new library in that part of the city, and making sure they understand they're every bit are equal as the rest of the city, and making sure they don't feel left out. I think that's going to be the trick moving forward.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, geographically, they're El Paseo, the mall, all these other amenities, Living Desert, McCallum, all these other amenities, the Civic Center Park, are all what you would consider the south end of town. So we don't want to have just homes up there and they have to drive over here to enjoy our beautiful amenities. We want to provide the services out there, that regional, the 40-acre park, the 27-acre park, and again, hopefully a library. And of course, CSUSB. Be nice to have that as a standalone CSU PD campus. So as much pressure as we can put on
CSUP?
PD. In other words, instead of being Cal State University San Bernardino / Palm Desert, it would be nice to have a standalone university eventually. CSU PD. I mean, we donated that land, and we'd like to see it grow and flourish.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you have any words of wisdom for people trying to get into politics these days?
Boy, I don't know. I did it, everybody's got to do it their own way. They have to be authentic and genuine, just be themselves. And hopefully the voters appreciate that. And eventually, if you try to report to be something you're not, they're going to find out. Hopefully you're passionate about the area you're serving. I happen to love Palm Desert. It's very easy for me to devote my days to serving Palm Desert because I genuinely believe this is the best city in the valley. I mean, it really has so much going for it. And I just really want to make sure future generations get to enjoy what I'm enjoying. So that would be probably my bit of advice. Make sure you campaign hard. Get to know you. Hopefully you like people and get to know the people you're going to serve.
What's the population of Palm Desert right now?
53,000.
And it's going to grow by 10?
Unless there's a major recession or somebody puts a halt on all that development in the north end of town, we should be around 60 to 65,000 within the next 10 to 15 years is the anticipated growth. So we'll see. Yeah.